Hi, fourth grade, Mrs. Bilger here for our reading lesson for Tuesday, May 5th. So today we're continuing our talk about character traits. Yesterday we did some work with traits versus feelings and understanding what the difference really is, and then being able to determine what the trait is for our main character. So we did a little bit of that work yesterday. Today we're kind of continuing that conversation, except today, instead of talking about traits versus feelings, we're going to take what we know about traits and feelings and talk about how a character changes over time. So today I want to remind you and teach you that as a character develops throughout a story through various things, problem solution, whatever the setting may affect, however the setting may affect the character, all the various elements of a story, that those different things really do help the character change and develop and mature throughout the story. So in doing that, we have to think about a few things. So if we see some of the post-it notes that we have here, some of the things we can think about are naming contradictions. Contradictions are opposing thoughts. Naming hidden sides that the character might have. Sometimes in stories, you get a point of view that is just the character and their point of view and their thoughts and things about them that you necessarily the characters wouldn't know. So those hidden sides. Naming different multiple inner drives, what really drives that character and different things that drive that character, and then coming up with this grand theory that you have about your character and how this character changes and develops over time. So in doing that, we want to think about, what does this character really, really want? We can name multiple traits. We talked about traits and feelings yesterday, so we can name multiple traits. We can say, on one hand, the character is really motivated and determined, but on the other hand, this character is really lazy when it comes to whatever X, Y, and Z is in your story. You want to name their wants and desires. What do they really, really want and desire? What is their motivation for the way that they are and the way that they act? And then also naming a small character action and how that one thing can be really important to the character. So something that I just kind of think about as I'm reading is, this character really wants. That can also be a sentence starter for you as well, which is a really nice way to kind of get yourself not only thinking about your reading, but then this, when you do your writing, it helps you to analyze your reading as you're writing. So think about this. To kind of do this work, as you read across a story, think about the character's thoughts, think about their feelings about the problem, not only the problem that happens in the beginning of the story, but think about the whole story, the beginning, middle, and end, and how they react and how they have feelings and thoughts about that specific problem. And then name the key moment of that change. So when do you notice that the character really has made that change from being, on one hand they're this, on the other hand they're this, because of this? So that's really helpful when it comes to thinking about change. So some other sentence starters you can use. The character is blah, 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 but on the other hand is also blah, 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 blah. Okay. It seemed like a small thing at the time, but one thing that was really important was. So that could be your moment of change. We talked about that key moment of change right here. So one thing that you could do as a sentence starter, or one thing to help you think about that, is right here. So it seemed small at the time, but one thing that was really important was this. So that could be your small moment. So in thinking about that, I just want to model this here for you. And how to kind of go about thinking about it, analyzing it, and getting our thoughts down on paper. So I'm thinking about when we read Stone Fox and we talked about Little Willie and some of the things that he did. And as I was reading that, I really did notice that he had changed over time. He really is determined. That's one of his traits. He seems to never give up. He made a big decision to save the farm all by himself. For example, he joined the dog sled race to save the farm, and that really showed how determined he was. So I'm taking a trait. We talked about traits yesterday. I'm taking that trait of determination. So I'm stating that already. That's what I know about Little Willie. But as I continued to think, I realized that I really do think that Little Willie is more than one way. Is more than one way. On one hand, so we talked about that as being one of our sentence starters. So on one hand, he is determined. Right? We state that. He saves the farm. Again and again. And he really does it on his own. He enters the race. He harvests the crops. So he does all that work kind of by himself. So on the other hand, okay, so notice there I did on one hand he is, and then on the other hand he is. So on the other hand, he's also a little stubborn. Okay, that's an interesting thought, right? So we say determined, but really stubborn. So that can kind of contradict each other. So you see where that contradiction really comes into play. So Little Willie won't listen to anyone when they say not to join the race. So that's kind of my text evidence. So Little Willie All right, so an interesting few things here. And we also know in the very beginning of this story, he's really scared that grandfather won't get out of bed. He decided to solve this problem, though, by taking Searchlight, harvesting the crops, potatoes, all by himself. So there's some kind of key moments that we've noticed some change. We've also noticed some contradicting things. So those are all parts that really help us notice this change. So I just want to real quickly underline some things in here. So on one hand, he is, okay? So that was kind of some of our sentence starters. And then on the other hand, he's. So also some sentence starters. We showed those contradicting sides. We talked about up here naming contradictions. So those are some ways that you can do this in sentence starters. And we also talked about using traits to help you do this. So we talk about being determined, right? That's one of our traits. And then we also talked about being stubborn. So not only thinking about character traits and feelings and the way that the character is reacting or the way that the character is feeling about a certain problem or about a certain event is really telling for that character. We also need to think about how that character is changed because of those things. So to be a successful reader, be a successful writer, one thing we can really analyze are those character traits and understanding how those traits can really play a role into understanding the character and how they change and mature. So in doing so, thinking about how those character traits may contradict each other, thinking about some hidden sides that the character may have. And then once you kind of get through those thoughts, you can organize them in a very simple way where you can analyze, just like we did here with Little Willie. We named on one hand, he's this with a trait, and then on the other hand, he's this and named a trait. So that can show us a little bit more about that character and help us understand them a little bit more. And then also in time, you can see how they've changed over time as well. So delving into them and into that character a little bit more to understand them. So today, when you do your work today, you're going to listen to a story, a short story. It's a children's book called Tommy Tummy Ache. And it is about a kiddo in school, and it kind of goes through some of the things that he does in school. And then at the end, he ends up to be kind of a different kiddo. So understanding his character as you go about the story today. So you're going to listen to Mrs. Bilger read that for you, and then you'll have a doc where I want you to kind of talk about the character traits and talk about how the character changes throughout the story. So one more time today and every day when you read, you're thinking about the character, how they change over time, and in doing so, you're thinking about traits, feelings, thoughts, and how they're reacting to problems and events in the story. All right, readers, off you go.